Creative babble.
The holiday season officially starts when you get that first card in the mail. Shutterfly makes it easy to add more meaning to the everyday with hundreds of holiday card designs that can be personalized in seconds with your favorite photos from this year. Select your greeting, customize the color, and even add little extras like personalized foil to make a holiday card that really shines. Enjoy 40% off with code SMILE40 at Shutterfly.com and send something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
This series is titled LaDonna's Surrogates, possibly the most boring title I could come up with, but it seems to resonate with LaDonna supporters, so I'm sticking with it. In the first 2 episodes, we profiled surrogate numero uno, Dennis McCaslin, a grammar-challenged blogger who posts mugshots of recent arrests and for some reason that can't be explained, trash about all of LaDonna's enemies. When he's not tarnishing people's reputation, he enjoys kicking back and watching local wrestlers lube up and attack each other. Dennis McCaslin is just one of the handful of people who have staked his reputation to support LaDonna at all costs. But you have to ask yourself, how the heck does she find these people? If I were accused of half the things LaDonna's accused of, I don't think I would have such vocal supporters. I wouldn't expect it either. That's a tall ask. For LaDonna, recruiting surrogates must be challenging. How does she do it? Today, we're going to talk about a woman who was actively being groomed to be LaDonna's next surrogate. Luckily for her, my series came out just in the nick of time to prevent that from happening. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else.
Ford Pro FinSimple offers flexible financing solutions for all kinds of businesses, whether you're an electrician or run an organic farm. Because we know that your business demands financing that works when you need it, like when your landscaping company lands a new account. Wherever you see your business headed, Ford Pro FinSimple can help you pursue it with financing solutions today. Get started at fordpro.com/financing.
How did you meet LaDonna?
So I started working for a company called Uncovered.
Meet Lexi Kakis.
And the first case I ever researched was the Melissa Witt case. So that was very much like my entry point into true crime. And then I reached out to her because I had a couple questions. And then one thing kind of led to another. When I was done with my research, I sent it over to her and she reviewed it. And it just kind of went from there.
Was that when she was working with Alicia or post Alicia?
That was pre-Alicia. It was like 2021. Like, I think I met her in like March of 2021. And what's interesting about the Melissa Witt case is I was born in October of 1994. Melissa went missing in December of 1994. So I was drawn to that aspect of it. And so that was one of the things that resonated with me about the case, among other things.
And so then what happened after? I mean, kind of describe how the relationship evolved.
Yeah, I think just kind of like we had some similar friends, other podcasters, things like that. I met her for the first time in person at CrimeCon Vegas, but we've had like Zoom calls. And I think just from the work that I did, she saw that I was capable of producing a certain level and standard of work, doing it ethically, responsibly, things like that, that I think she really admired. So it just kind of blossomed sort of from there.
Did she ever pay you or was this all free?
No, it wasn't like that. It was like I was truly working for Uncover, and it was more so, hey, like, here's another thing that you could use for the web case.
Okay,
so you were just I wasn't an employee of hers. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay, I gotcha. So you were doing your own thing, and you were just being helpful with her. Did you have any negative? I mean, you've heard the series, I imagine.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience any of that?
No. So that was, I think, what was so interesting and both shocking from other people's experiences. But I think too, knowing now that like she wanted true crime to be her career and things like that, like I was, supportive of the work that she was doing. 'Cause at the time, I didn't realize that there was all these, issues with what she was doing and, the crime scene footage and all these, just unethical things. She wasn't sharing that with me. And I should mention that I never saw a piece of documentation from the case file. I was only ever working off of publicly available information. I did personally try to request the case file twice. One was probably in 2021. And she mentioned it to me at one point because I guess someone from the Fort Smith Police Office Department was like, oh, this person wanted to request the file. And then they ended up denying me, which is fine. I mean, that's a common thing that happens anyway. And then in 2024, again, this year, I tried to request it just around when all this stuff was happening and the doc. And I kind of expected I'd get denied for that too.
That is interesting.
So I never got to see documentation.
Even though she had it, so she didn't share it with you, which is kind of counter to everything I've been reporting. Because in my reporting, she was sharing it willy-nilly with everyone, or at least with Patty Rush. And I've seen those screenshots. So it sounds like she might have learned her lesson or maybe got spooked.
Maybe. I don't know. I think also too, like, I'm not local to her, whereas Patty was.
Right.
So I think that's a different thing. Like, I'm in New York. So I think it was just different context. And like anytime we did meet, it was typically like on Zoom or whatever. So it was just different.
So why would you want to insert yourself into this? If you managed to like skirt past all the harassment, why would you want to talk to me?
Fair question. I think partially because I think my perspective is different. Whereas a lot of people you were speaking with was more so in parts of her past that have now kind of become part of her present. Whereas I think I was working on stuff that was present and future. And also knowing that like my name is associated with her from the forward that I wrote. I'm not thrilled about that now. I'm not going to do anything about it. But like, I do kind of want to reclaim my name a little bit of like, yes, I did that at the time, but like, I do genuinely care about doing cold case research the right way with ethical standards and doing it responsibly and all that. And that is something that's so important to me that I didn't pick up on her not doing it that way.
Lexi Kakis didn't come on my show to badmouth LaDonna and join the pileup. That's certainly not her goal. She worked with LaDonna for years and never experienced any harassment, and even wrote the foreword to LaDonna Humphrey's latest book. It's a very different perspective than you've heard so far. But one thing I want to make clear, to my knowledge, Lexi never did any of LaDonna's dirty work. To me, she was just a surrogate in training. Your name is kind of associated with her. People could automatically assume that you feel one way or the other. And you're also presenting this different perspective, right? Where you didn't experience the harassment. That's really noteworthy. I'm curious about, now that you've listened to the series, what are your feelings about LaDonna and some of the accusations that have been brought forward? I
think so much was presented that I really feel like I would be a fool. Like, even if a fraction of it is true, it's still bad. And I think her attempts at trying to save her image and things like that have also been incredibly disappointing and kind of immature in her way of going about it. So it's just like, it's sad. But I also think there's a lot of merit to what everyone else is saying. And I think it's interesting to have all these different types of people, different parts of her life coming forward. Like, that can't all not be true. Like, it would take an insane, effort to be doing that. And I don't think these people are doing that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's two sides to every story. And I love the fact that you're presenting a different aspect that we haven't presented yet.
Yeah.
So I would like to show you some of the screenshots that I found. Because I asked Alicia when you reached out to me, I was like, hey, have you ever heard of Lexi? Yeah, she said, I know her when I asked her. And I said, well, what's her story? And Alicia said, well, you were somebody that you were in touch with LaDonna before her and during the time that she was working with LaDonna. And then she kind of mentions that she talked about Lexi as an annoying but helpful groupie.
Interesting, because she never made that known to me.
No, that gets worse. So let's see. Now she shows me an actual screenshot, and I can share this with you. And LaDonna said, Lexi, yeah, she's a big fangirl, sigh. And then the next one is, her name is Lexi Kakis. I would not, however, tell her about Randall or that you are working on a suspect for the Witt case. She is jonesing bad to get her teeth into this case. She's super young, and while she did a great job on the timeline, I do not trust her.
That's so interesting and also so disheartening because she never, she really played the two sides of that.
Yeah, because you never got that vibe?
No, never. Never. And I also, to clear my name from that perspective, I was not trying to be like a fangirl. It was just genuine passion for like the cold case advocacy, the research and that side. But it wasn't like I looked up to her like she was some, I don't know. That to me is interesting and upsetting to hear too, but not surprising in the grand scheme of what we know now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to get your reaction because, we started this conversation as like you're saying neutral things about her, which is like something that we haven't heard.
Yeah.
And not even like positive things, but like just neutral things.
And my point of speaking with you isn't to like destroy her life or anything like that, but I think it's just a different perspective. And I will say to that too, the moment that Alicia was out of the picture, and by no means is this a dig at Alicia, but like suddenly my friendship status with her seemed to be, upgraded. So, you can talk with both sides of your face that like, I'm a groupie on this, that, the other, but like when you needed more people for the Witt case, you were quick to include me in that. You didn't have to.
I think she misjudges people a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my perspective. This is my only personal opinion. I think she mistook Alicia as somebody who would just tag along with her and that she could manipulate her personal life story.
Yeah.
And that Alicia wouldn't ever fight back. I bet she never even imagined that Alicia would have the backbone to stand up to her. And then she probably thought that of you too. She just assumes that people are weak. And then David McClam, she looks at him. I mean, the guy, I don't like to talk bad about him because I don't want to like insult people with low intelligence, know, but I mean, she finally found the guy that would do anything for her. And then David McCaslin with the stupid blog, these are people that will just bow down and do her work. And it doesn't sound like you and Alicia ever collapsed, under her pressure.
Yeah.
It's creepy to see the parallels. Just like Alicia, LaDonna roped Lexi in to produce one of her true crime pet projects. In fact, right before all this went down, LaDonna and Lexi were even supposed to co-write a book together, just like LaDonna and Alicia did on the book Strangled. So that's interesting. I didn't even realize that. So she wanted you to write a book with her. Yeah.
I mean, I think in some ways she wanted me to become the new stand-in Alicia, I guess. And also, too, like, she included me in things. So as much as she wants to say that I was a groupie, she was one who invited me to be on the board of her nonprofit and write the forward for her book and do these things. So, like, it's just interesting for her to turn around and say that.
Yeah, you weren't expecting that, right? From this conversation?
That was a shock. I've never heard that before from anyone. But, like, knowing what we know now, especially from the last episode you did, like, the way she talks about people, positively to their face, and then she's nasty behind their back. And at some point that will catch up to you.
Oh, the board, you mentioned she approached you about becoming a board member.
Yeah.
Which organization was that for?
All the Lost Girls.
And did you ever become a board member?
So I sat in on one meeting, but no paperwork was ever signed. She said she was going to send me paperwork, and I wasn't going to push the issue because, like, I had other things going on. I also forgot about it. It wasn't like there was meetings every week. It was one meeting that was in, I think, December of last year. And then we were supposed to meet again. And then it never happened for one reason or another. And there was no reschedule and whatever. I do have all the meeting notes from that because I was the one who did took the meeting notes.
So it's interesting. You go to this one meeting, you're taking notes.
Yeah.
Did it seem to you that the other people in the meeting, the other board members, that they had official roles, or did they ask you to take notes, or you just took notes because you felt like you needed to do something?
She volunteered me to do it. And I was like, that's fine. I'm fuzzy on the timing of it. But like, so it wasn't a big deal. I didn't really mind. I mean, like, I've also never sat in on a nonprofit board meeting, so I didn't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, it didn't seem very formal necessarily. She had in true LaDonna fashion, she had a lot of big ideas, But then, there was very little execution.
So I'm curious because you probably attended one of the few All the Lost Girls meetings that have ever taken
Yeah,
place.
probably.
Did they talk? I mean, because All the Lost Girls has a very narrow scope. Women who have been strangled, right?
Yeah.
And as far as I know, the only case that they've covered is the Missy Witt case.
Correct.
Were you talking about other girls who have been strangled, or were you talking about LaDonna's true crime ambitions? Like, what was the topic? I'm curious.
I think it was twofold. It was a nonprofit, but then she also wanted to be the production company side, to be the machine that produces all of these documentaries. So, yes, it was a nonprofit, but I think she also, I don't know if it was a separate company or if it was just the title, but she did have intentions of wanting to do more. But
I guess the assumption is that it seems like it's a shell nonprofit, because All the Lost Girls has not, to my knowledge, covered any other strangled cases that I know of. And
no, it's only been Melissa Witt.
Yeah.
It's only been.
And it seems like a vehicle to get her production company off the ground. It seems to me that LaDonna Humphrey and her surrogate, Amy Smith, are using their nonprofit, All the Lost Girls, as a way to fund LaDonna's true crime career. Even after my series, Who's Afraid of LaDonna Humphrey, was released, LaDonna was hunting for her next case. One of the stories she had her eyes set on was the Dana Stidham case. Dana Stidham was an 18-year-old girl who disappeared on July 25, 1989, after leaving the grocery store in Bella Vista, Arkansas. Her body was found 3 months later. No arrests have ever been made in connection with her death.
I was on a team for the Dana Stidham case, which was apparently a name that was mentioned in the Witt file, and that was going to be like one of her next projects, and she was going to do a companion book and also a documentary on that. We had many meetings, but not much ever got done on it. So it was interesting to me, too, that she could never get cooperation from local police. And at that point, too, you would think, having worked on the Witt case, you would have had some established relationships to make that not an impossible feat.
Another case LaDonna was working on was the case of Clinton Nelson. In 2016, Clinton Nelson attended a house party in Louisiana. He was never seen again. Earlier this year, LaDonna announced that she was working on a documentary about this case. Even after my brutal hour interview with LaDonna, she couldn't help but plug her next project.
Actually, it's for years I had been studying the case of, and I've got to go. I did tell you I had a hard stop at 3:15. I've got to pick up kids, but the case of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah was always really interested in that, and am actually working on a book about him. And I don't know what you know about him, but he was pretty horrific cannibal and child murderer, and his roommate actually saw a lot of stuff.
Let me interrupt her pitch for a second. Remember how LaDonna was suggesting that Daniel Watson killed Melissa Witt because his roommate noticed that he had a Mickey Mouse watch? LaDonna even told the U.S. Sun, a major publication, that she was in contact with Melissa Witt's killer's roommate. Now she's announcing a new podcast about roommates who live with serial killers.
So it's pretty fascinating. We're going to kick it off with Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, and then we've got 11 other stories about people who were roommates with what they later found out to be serial killers. So, yeah, I'm excited about that.
But it's not about Melissa Witt, right?
No, it has nothing to do with Melissa Witt.
I have reached out to some of the victims' families involved in these cases to ask them if they are aware of the serious allegations made against LaDonna Humphrey. A cousin of Dana Stidham, the Bella Vista woman who was killed, told me that they signed a contract with LaDonna, but that the project has stalled out. The person who runs a Clinton Nelson Facebook group told me that they are still actively working on the documentary.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. From the co-director of Shrek and the visionary behind Toy Story comes Spellbound, a magical new animated adventure starring Rachel Zegler, John Lithgow, Jennifer Lewis, Nathan Lane, and Titus Burgess with Javier Bardem and Nicole Kidman. When a powerful spell turns her parents into monsters, Princess Elian must journey into the wild to reverse the curse before it's too late. Watch Spellbound only on Netflix November 22nd.
Let's get back to my conversation with Lexi Kakis. The reason why I ask her all these questions is because you kind of had that insight of like you were around her after Alicia. And so were you around her while she was with David McClam or?
No, I mean, he just popped up sort of out of nowhere. I don't mean to be rude, but
Bless his heart. So, but I just wonder, I guess what my listeners are probably wondering is, if she did this to the Melissa Witt case, right? Like, what is she working on next? Like, who is she trying to capitalize on their story?
And even to that point, too, like, because sometimes she has these big ideas, but then obviously sometimes on the execution of things is where, things fall flat.
Okay, so Alicia leaves. You kind of worked with her a little bit, informally after Alicia leaves. What kind of contact have you had since the podcast or right before the podcast came out?
So I saw her at CrimeCon Nashville.
Oh, this year's, and that's, remind people the timing of this.
So this, I think, was the weekend that the trailer dropped, and which was interesting.
The trailer for my show, right?
For your show.
Yeah.
And like, you can tell, I mean, it was obvious she was spooked. She was really concerned. She was worried about it. And I started seeing it other places online too, just from other people sharing it, like that sort of thing. And then on one of the nights, I don't remember if it was a Friday or the Saturday of CrimeCon, she had an off-site event that there was some of us. And most of it was just her being super upset about all of this and kind of just like, really just like needing the sympathy and the support. And like, on one hand, you want to be a friend to someone. But on the other hand, when I look back at it now, it was like, I am almost 30. You are 20 years older than me. This is just weird. Like, there should be other people in your life that you should be going to for some of this. Like, she was concerned if like, will everybody hate me and whatever. And it's just strange to kind of like need that level of support from people.
And by the way, listeners, I did not know she was going to CrimeCon. I didn't time the podcast so it could come out the weekend of CrimeCon. That was very coincidental. But you're saying that she was walking around CrimeCon and it wasn't like she was acknowledging that this was going on. It wasn't like she was trying to like ignore it. It was very obvious that there was this podcast about her and she would talk to you about it.
Yeah, it was like unavoidable. Within my circle of people that I was there with, like it was a topic of discussion. And even to like, she left early because of it. I think on Saturday at some point she left or Sunday, I don't really remember, but she left early. And then when we were all home, I think not long after, we were supposed to have like a meeting for the documentary, and that went quiet, the documentary for the Stidham case.
And then it just kind of petered off and you never heard from her again?
And then the show kind of dropped, I think maybe within the first 2 episodes, whatever the timing was. Suddenly, we were all kicked out of the group. It was a Facebook Messenger group. We were all kicked out of the group. No final message or anything, or no heads up. Then we all got individual messages from Amy kind of being like, hey, like, wanted to see if you're still interested in working on this project with us. And I was like, I don't really have the time for it right now, which wasn't a lie necessarily, because I did.
So let me get a better understanding. I want to dwell a little bit more on this CrimeCon thing.
That's fine.
If my podcast wouldn't have dropped at all, like let's say my podcast didn't exist, what were her plans at CrimeCon that year?
She just had a booth. So she was not speaking. It was just the Deep Dark Secrets table that she had there.
No David, no Amy.
Amy was with her.
So it was her and Amy. She was supposed to have a booth there. Did she go forward? Like, did she actually meet people during Podcast Row or?
Yeah, she had a table. She did like the whole, thing you do when you're on Podcast Row and float around, say hello, whatever it is. But I think once the podcast dropped, I think that spooked her. And I don't know if she was getting questions from other people. I don't know how that, people were confronting her about it or asking or whatever, but I think she felt the need that like she overstayed her welcome there, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I felt awkward for her, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's an awkward situation. I think just like as far as human experiences go, like it's just an awkward spot to be in.
I wouldn't want to be in CrimeCon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame her. If I was in her shoes, I wouldn't want to be there either. You're kind of a sitting duck in a way. Actually, at that meetup the next morning, she's like, I have all the proof. So she sent it to me. And I think the next morning I skimmed it, but like, you know, you're peopled out from being at CrimeCon. Like, I'm not trying to do like a deep dive on this. And at a certain point, it's a lot of he said, she said, you know? She was also advocating for someone to do some sort of journalism or advocacy around this. And I remember specifically saying, like, I didn't say this to her, but I said this to someone else, where it's like, first of all, no one's going to do that. You know, I mean, well, she had someone do it, but like, it's just, there's so many other things to put energy towards instead of doing like a counter podcast or whatever.
So let me get this straight. The moment my podcast drops, she's at CrimeCon and she's already formulating the idea for this reaction podcast, this rebuttal podcast that ultimately became We Are Not Afraid.
She wanted someone to do it. No one stepped up and be like, oh, I'm going to do it. No one wanted to do that.
Who would want to do that?
Oh, you're putting yourself out, you know, to dry. Like, it's just not smart.
And why is she not doing it?
Beats me. I mean, she made that one episode about Alicia that seemed to me more so just bullying and being nasty than it was really trying to clear her name. And I think one thing that makes me like, that showed me a lot about who she is just the way she responded to things. Like, it was just so childish. I mean, I was the one who told her to take down the photo of Alicia on Twitter that she posted in one of the threads that I'm sure somebody has a screenshot of.
I have the screenshot. It's a tweet where LaDonna Humphrey posted an image of Alicia's death fetish video with the sole purpose of humiliating Alicia.
So I was like, that shit's not going to age well for you.
No.
It's not nice.
In what reality, you know, that's the thing about these vindictive, like narcissistic people, that they want to make an argument and they're not even thinking about the consequences or how it's perceived by normal people, right? Like, normal people don't think that posting a screenshot of a girl who says that she was sexually assaulted during a death fetish porn video would be tasteful as a rebuttal point, you know?
But also, who are you to say if she was or wasn't assaulted?
Right.
What does that gain you? What is the goal to that? That accomplishes nothing. That doesn't solve Melissa Witt's case. That doesn't get any more tips. That does nothing. That's just you trying to stand your ground on something that doesn't push the needle anywhere.
And they believed it a couple months before, and then now they don't, you know, and what changed, you know?
And then to switch and then be on the side of the fetishers, which is bizarre, because it's like you were saying a whole lot of things about them on your podcast, how they're awful people, they encourage murder, that they're, you know, violent towards women and all of these things. And then to just
make peace,
you know, do a 180 is bizarre.
It is very
because
bizarre.
Now you don't have enough people in your corner.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And even for me, like, I just knew I didn't want to be a part of the stuff that she was doing anymore because it had too much of a black cloud over it. And I was like, if I'm going to do this work, it's hard work to begin with. Like, cold case work is hard. It's not easy. It's not for the weak. It can be very emotional, mentally draining, and all of that. And like, I don't need to add an additional cloud to that. So it was just very evident.
This was awesome. I mean, just such great perspective. And I think that people will appreciate it. And I love how this conversation started. Your approach to this wasn't to attack her or anything. It was really, you're just filling in some gaps for us.
Yeah.
And it's sad that and I mean, people talk shit all the time, right? I talk shit about people talk shit, but she definitely talked shit about you. And that's not what you came to do, you know? And it must have been kind of revealing, right?
It was very revealing.
What's more revealing is that Lexi Kakis dodged a major bullet. LaDonna Humphrey had her tentacles wrapped around her, and she was supposed to be the next surrogate. But somehow, she got away. Thankfully, it sounds like Lexi is on to bigger and better things. She's now the co-host of the podcast Seeking Justice, a new investigative series exploring the suspicious death of Don Pasella. about a whistleblower who was found dead just before she was supposed to testify on behalf of a man wrongfully convicted of mortgage fraud. Sounds like a good podcast. Check it out. But before we go, isn't it funny how LaDonna quickly spun up this concept for a rebuttal podcast, We Are Not Afraid, while she was at CrimeCon? And how she tried to recruit the people around her to serve as the mouthpiece for the podcast. Thankfully, Lexi declined. But who is dumb enough to step up to the plate and defend LaDonna Humphrey at all costs? Does such person exist?
Hey, everybody, and welcome to We Are Not Afraid. This is the podcast that exposes the truth among all the lies. Of course, I'm your host, David McClam.
Next time on LaDonna's Surrogates, the rise and fall of surrogate David McClam.
Creative Babble.